You're listening to the Dad Whisperer podcast with Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield. Be sure to follow her on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find out more about Dr. Michelle at drmichellewatson.com. That's drmichellewatson.com. Here now is your host, Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dad Whisperer podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield, and you know how excited I get every week just knowing that we get to connect. I envision you dads literally here across from me, and we're having a conversation. We're in the trenches together as you desire to be a dad that your daughter needs. And I know that's one of your ultimate goals, which is why you're listening today. Well, you know that every week I use the same grid, so I want you to picture yourselves, Dad, right now, standing side by side with other men, other dads just like you who want to be the best dad they can be. And I'm on the sidelines as your coach, as you're running your fathering race, saying, on your mark, get set, go. On your mark is the topic or the theme. Get set as I'm filling that in with stories and stats. And go is always your practical action step so that you can put your love for your daughters into action this week. And if you're like many of the men I've talked to, you've said these things also work with your sons. So let's go, dads, and get the conversation started today. And today I've invited my favorite guest co-host here, a seasoned fathering coach of 3 decades and 3 daughters, and he just happens to be my husband, Dr. Ken Canfield, founder of the National Center for Fathering. Welcome, my love.
Thank you. It's a delight to be with you. I can't wait for today's message because I think it's one of the most potent and important for dads who want to get in their hearts and open up the heart of their daughter.
Well, this is the 4th in the series. I know I've stretched this out. They're not just consecutive here on the Dad Whisperer podcast, but it's the 4th section of 5 out of my book, Let's Talk, Conversation Starters for Dads and Daughters, because this is the one, as you just said, Ken, that you believe is the most important in this book because it has to do with a dad leading his daughter to what?
To lament.
Yep, 4th section, it's a chapter in the book, and that's on your mark today. Lead your daughter to lament. Now for get set, let's kind of break that down, Ken, and make that concept make more sense because you and I both know it's a bit of an old-fashioned word. Nobody really talks about lamenting anymore, but I needed another L in my acrostic series there. So lamenting, dads, means that you are helping your daughter to tune into where she's grieving, to where she's sad, to her emotional center. Because if those wounds are not cleaned out, Dad, they will lead her to make poor decisions. So it could be that she's lamenting because of hurts from you. It could be voids from you, places where you've missed connecting with her heart. It could be losses outside of your home with friendships, a job, a career. It could be the loss of a pet. Sometimes I have found daughters are grieving years later because that pet was their best friend. And so whatever that is that's going on in her where she's hurting, today is about equipping you as a dad to better connect with where her heart is tender and to where her heart is hurting. But Ken, I want to ask you, why do you think this is one of the most important chapters in the book and one of the most important, I would say, podcasts a dad could listen to?
2 reasons. First of all, it forces us to get out of our head and into our hearts. As a man myself, Michelle, you know, grieving is not easy. I mean, I'm thinking ahead of what I need to do and get things done. And so I think this lamenting is so key because here's the thing. Daughters, whether they verbalize it or not during those teenage years, they lament from the lack of interaction with you. Now, I'm not saying that you need to smother your daughter or anything that's going beyond, but this lamenting, maybe she wants to hear from you, see you, or just have your presence around. There's powerful research that substantiates this. So I am really stoked that this is an issue we need to jump into big time.
So let me just say another thing, Dad, that I have discovered in my 25 plus years of clinical practice as a counselor, where I'm sitting across from daughters that I've either counseled or others that I've mentored in other settings. And what I have found is that a lot of times a dad gets triggered when his own unhealed wounds, right, get activated. So you may have a need to control or a need to settle down. And so you're getting triggered when her emotions are too big and too much, and you can't control her and you can't settle her down. So here's just a rule of thumb, Dad, that I often teach my clients, which is that the thing you think is the thing isn't the thing. Okay, say that with me. The thing you think is the thing isn't the thing. So when your daughter on a scale of 0 to 10 is having an 8, 9, or 10 reaction, it's probably something that has to do with something else besides the thing that you might think is the thing. Okay, that might sound like a tongue twister, but I want you to get that in your grid, Dad, that when your daughter reacts to something in an 8, 9, or 10, it's something old. It's some other thing, an old wound, an old story, something from yesterday, something from at school. And if you react in that moment and say, no daughter of mine is going to speak like that to me, stop disrespecting your mom, and you try to get bigger and louder and more powerful, you're going to hurt her more. If you can stay calm, because here's the other side of that, Dad, is that when you hit an 8, 9, or 10, in your reaction to your daughter's lament, that's your own stuff and that's your old stuff. So one of the things that's going to help you lead your daughter to lament is that you get close enough to hear her heart cries about the grief she's carrying. And remember that this is where you must rise up and seize the opportunity to begin a conversation with your daughter about what she's hurting over while you're listening to how maybe you've hurt her or where she's hurt, and being willing to be a catalyst in the process. I know that's harder than it might seem, but that's what today is all about.
Now, let's go over that again. The thing that you think is the problem is not really the problem.
Right.
Okay, Dad, as a fix-it dad myself, dad of 3 daughters and 9 granddaughters, this is challenging because it's a whole new arena. And I believe us learning to lament, Michelle, is going to make us better as men, deeper, because we got to get in tune with what is this going on in this little girl, young lady, or grown woman's heart. And I know you've said this before, but think of this. You are married to someone's daughter. And it's out of that relationship that you became a father. And so I think you're set up for success here, but getting the fine details down is so key. So I'll say it again. The thing that I think is the thing isn't really the thing. I got to find out what the thing is.
And dig deeper. And you've even talked, Ken, about men needing to learn to lament, right? This isn't something men are taught. How many men's conferences? I mean, you've spoken at men's conferences for 3 decades. How often have you heard someone up front teaching men how to connect to their emotional side, their emotional center, or their hurts?
Most often is this, and it rhymes with lament. It's called repent. And men get emotional when they recognize there's something that they need to turn over to the Lord or they need to walk away from because it's something that's hindering their relational vitality in life. And so this lamenting, I believe, is going to lead us into a depth that we're just beginning to touch. I think the whole culture is lamenting right now with all the stuff coming down, and not to even consider what your daughter's going through. You're from another generation. Dad, you were born in the last century. Right. Now think about that. And now these gifts God's given us, we need to get in sync with them. So synchrony with this lamenting is key.
I want to highlight what you just said about repent, because Dad, oftentimes when you use a power position, often in anger, you may go to mad to counter her sad. And those are 2 sides of the same coin. And so often you'll miss connecting with her sadness, but that's where you are going to bond with her. We call that a trauma bond, which is the strongest bond 2 humans can have. But Dad, if you go to anger, again, no one's perfect. I do it too. That tends to happen to be a default emotion for me a lot of times when I'm overwhelmed. Just ask Ken. And really, where the key is coming in repentance and saying, you know what, I'm so sorry that I did that. And it's not just saying you're sorry, it's following it up with, will you forgive me? So that is a really great starting position for you being a dad who leads your daughter to lament is that you're modeling to her that you're willing to repent. So there's a key place that I want to start. The other thing I'm going to add, Ken, is knowing that sometimes daughters have told me when they're lamenting, they're hurting over things, maybe a breakup, and their dad may say like, hey, just get over it. There's other fish in the sea. Kind of move on. You've got it. You've got everything it takes. And you're kind of thinking you're a coach on the sidelines and she's out on the field. But Dad, that model doesn't often work for women. We cannot speed up our grief process. And really, we're going to help you as a dad to walk with us into the valley of that shadow of death or mourning or grief if you can pace with our need to go at a certain pace. Not that you're requiring us to jump over and go through it as fast as you and just be okay and, move on. And so the more you can ask questions, and that's what we're going to give you some today, that you can ask her questions about what's really going on inside, it's going to help you grow. And a lot of daughters I've talked with, even me myself, can say with my dad, I often have felt like I'm too much. My emotions are too big. They take too long to process. They're too much for my dad. And so then often with my dad, I've held back. And I don't say anything because I don't think he can handle my process. And maybe you're a dad like that too. And I think really, Ken, at the end of the day, it's crazy that God has put men and women in relationships together because we're wired often so different, whether it's husband, wife, dad and daughter, coworkers, boss and employee. But I think really in the big scheme of things, if dads can learn to pace with their daughter, those skills are going to carry over even outside of the home.
Absolutely. Now, I remember reading this book long ago about the difference between men and women. And women have to wait. They have to wait on their cycle. They don't know when things are going to happen. Where men, the testosterone is full bore, let's go. And it's very difficult to wait and be patient. You see this as you mature through the life cycle. And dads, this is where this waiting and just staying with whatever it is, even though it's foreign to you, you feel like you're on another planet vis-a-vis your daughter. And that is so important because if you stay with her through that, that bond grows deeper. And I know there are many things that we can't control. Tragedy happens. Mm-hmm. You may be a divorced dad, not of your own choosing, but of some broken relationship. And you're thinking, if I could just get some time with my daughter during this time, and she's lamenting at the same time, loyalty to her mother is causing her to split. So just staying with it and building that sense of a partnership as she grows through and maybe groans through the process.
But I love that you even just said, partnership, companionship, those really are the same. Yeah. I think root word that you're coming alongside your daughter and saying, I'm your partner, I'm your companion, I'm your ally, I'm your dad, and I'm not going to abandon you because you're too much for me. Even though you as a dad might be getting triggered, just breathe through it. I think another thing that may help you, Dad, is, and I've talked about this on other podcasts before, but is how to learn the art of asking good questions. So when your daughter is melting down and you're wanting to go into your fix-it mode, let's just get through it, let's move fast. Like you said, Ken, testosterone is kicking up. Dad, I would encourage you to learn the art of asking good questions. That's how you can stay with her as she's lamenting, which may look like this, that you just say, tell me more. I learned that from a dad, a valiant dad I've worked with named Mike. And I say worked with, I would say in the Abba Project, he's come into the group. We've worked side by side. And he's been on my program. I've seen so many things that he's carried from his business world into his fathering. And he'll say to his clients, he'll say to his coworkers, those that he leads, and his daughter, tell me more. Now, oftentimes we as daughters are thinking, you want me to hurry up. You want me to get done with the story and done with the emotion. But man, Dad, if you could learn from Mike and just say, tell me more, that's how you will pace with her. That's how you will grow. And I can sum that up by saying, Ken said I could have called this book, Let's Talk and Listen. Why is listening so key, Ken?
Listening is key because what you're doing is you're putting the fathering response and sermonette aside. When you take those two ears and just zip that one mouth, what you're doing is tuning in to what those things may be that are going to lead you to the right decision and the right support. And, I just want to go back. That companionship, I think, is you're going to be a partner in life. And I jokingly say, guys, guess who's going to take care of you when you get old? It isn't going to be your sons. No, your sons are going to help, in their particular way. But those daughters are tuned in to the emotional, the physical needs in a way sons aren't. And so I'm just so thankful that you're doing this on lamenting, because I think it's key. And these tell me more questions, I think, are profound. So let's talk about those scripts and how they can utilize those to get to the tell me more.
Actually, we are going to take a break, but I love that you set that up, Ken, as a teaser, because we are going to give dads practical action steps, and that is your go step. We're going to be leading all of this conversation to that end today, because you, like many dads, have said, tell me what to do, tell me what to say to fix it or to change things moving forward. Because even yesterday, Ken, I got a really long email from a dad just like you described, going through a divorce, saying, my daughters have now sided with mom against me, and it's been many years now, and I'm not invited to things, and I'm so overwhelmed. He didn't use the word overwhelmed, but it was more of that was my summary. And he said, his last 3 words were of the entire long email, I give up. He said, I cannot take this rejection anymore. It's too much. I give up. And so in encouraging him, I said, Dad, you can't give up. You can't give up. I know that you're hurting and you're overwhelmed and you're lamenting, but you can't give up. So Dad, hang in there. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, like Ken just said, we're going to be giving you more practical action steps to lead your daughter to lament.
Are you a dad who has ever desired a deeper connection with your daughter, but haven't known how to go about it? Let's Talk Conversation Starters for Dads and Daughters is the very resource you need. Dr. Michelle wrote it with you dads in mind. This book will support you with scripted questions, equip you to decode your daughter, and inspire you with stories of other dads and daughters. Don't wait any longer to be the hero you want to be and that your daughter needs you to be. So, to let the talking begin, head on over to drmichellewatson.com/books and order your copy today. This book will become a favorite in your fathering toolbox and will give you the answers you've been looking for. That's drmichellewatson.com/books. Now, back to the Dad Whisperer podcast.
Welcome back, Dad. Okay, let's keep this conversation going with you about how to keep the conversation going with your daughter as you lead her to lament. So Ken, in the book, in this section, in Let's Talk Conversation Starters for Dads and Daughters, there are 10 scripts where a dad can lead his daughter to lament. Would you first, before we talk about questions dads can ask, just give them an overview of some of those themes so dads can know that if these are issues their daughters are going through, they can get the book, have the scripts in front of them, as you just said, so that they can hit it out of the ballpark as a dad and not have to reinvent the wheel.
What these will do will open up conversations, and it puts the onus, the burden on the questions, not you, Dad. And so reading through these it's powerful. Here are some of the topics. First, questions on making amends for hurtful words you've spoken. Oh, Michelle, I unknowingly have said things that I need help unpacking with my daughters if I want to mature that relationship and be a better dad. Her father wounds from you. And they may not be intentional. You may get called, and you may be a physician that has to show up to do a surgery, and it means you're missing something. There's a father wound. Her father voids from you. There are no perfect fathers out there. We all have voids. One of the marks of a healthy father is that he recognizes that and that he attends to those. Next is distracted dads. If you or her mom have had an affair, now that's heavy, heavy stuff, but that's something that's so important to unpack about her parents' divorce. And that's you, Dad, talking about those things, and not so much you monologuing, but listening to her. On having you as her stepdad. Oh, Michelle, there are great resources out there right now to help stepdads. Ron Deal, a close friend and colleague of ours, has written about these. Estranged daughters who are open to talking. Estrangement is one of the things that we face all the time.
In fact, Ken, I would say probably 75% of the emails I get from dads are on estrangement. So of course I had to put questions, conversation starters on that topic. Okay, there's a couple more in that section. Tell the dads what they are.
Sibling rivalry. That's so important because this sibling bond supersedes your parental bond because sibs live longer if all goes well. Being adopted questions. Some of you have done the noble thing, reaching out and bringing a child, a daughter into your family. Those bring about questions that Michelle has laid out about the death of a loved one, a person, or a pet, anything that creates a loss. So these scripts are awesome, and as you go through them, they'll give you power to understand and to open up your daughter's heart.
So you and I, Ken, have really different stories around a dad-daughter relationship on lamenting. My dad is still alive. He's 83. And you've gone through a lamenting season in losing your wife. That's why God led us together after that. So you're still walking through a lamenting season with your daughters because it doesn't have an end date to it. In fact, every holiday, right, brings up again for your daughters that their mom isn't here. How do you as a dad, Ken, have a bandwidth to track with them in very different ways, all three of them grieving at different paces? You never know the next time something will be a trigger or really tap into an emotional place in them. How do you walk with them through this?
Having three daughters, they grieve differently, these three daughters. One's more open to talk about it, one's less open, and one is just, hey, let's walk through this together. Okay, so this is what it's hard. I have to get in touch with my grief before I can reach out and hear their grief. And so that has been hard because it's out of the relationship I had with their mother that they came about. And I'm still grieving that loss. And this is something that I can say our marriage, Michelle, has again renewed me. It's brought a sense of depth and stability that I didn't know I was missing. Then just listening to my daughters, not so much answering their questions, but just listening and tell me more about that. And so it's a growing process. And the thing you've hit on, this doesn't have an end point. This is going to go on the rest of their life and my life too. But there are opportunities to grow through this together. And so I'm always, tuned in now and much more aware of how I can be a part of that healing process and in the same time find healing myself.
Oh, I love that. Okay, well, Dad, I'm going to give you a couple questions here that you could ask your daughter even today, no matter her age, that would be great to add to your fathering toolbox. Okay, here's one of them. What words have I spoken to you that have stuck with you, that have made you feel better about yourself? Okay, so we're going to start with the positive. But then you follow up with, what hurtful or negative words have I spoken to you that have stuck with you, that have made you feel worse about yourself? Does that make sense? So what words have I spoken to you that have stuck with you, that have made you feel better about yourself? And what words have I spoken to you that have made you feel worse about yourself? Because then if your daughter can tell you those now, she doesn't have to carry them on with her into the days and years and months ahead. Does that make sense? So Dad, I just want to encourage you to keep pushing past, like Ken said, your own grief process and whatever's getting triggered in you that may make you want to pull back and not open up more wounds with your daughter. Like you may say, she seems okay now. I know I blasted her on Saturday for not cleaning her room or whatever. And Now it's Tuesday and she seems in a funk. You may say, I don't want to go back and ask her something about Saturday. Let's move on. I would encourage you to go back. You're going to have to learn that new skill set with your daughter that you might not learn otherwise. Maybe your son has seemed to move on different than her. Go back in and say, question, how did my response to you Saturday stick with you? What impact did that have? And then let her tell you and own it, take responsibility. And that is how you can bond with your daughter in a lamenting process, which is really powerful. So Ken, you've talked before about how someone can be an overcomer dad. How does a dad become an overcomer dad in the middle of his own stuff getting triggered? Maybe he didn't have a model from his dad, right? Real men don't cry. You don't go to that place. How can a dad be an overcomer dad in leading his daughter to lament?
Take a word from women, and that's this. Open your heart to another guy, particularly the wounds that you faced with your own father. This is a man wounding a man, or a man doing the best he could as a dad to equip you, and you find yourself empty, being vulnerable and broken. Now, I hate those because it almost seems like it's defeat. It isn't. It's victory because someone else has been broken on our behalf so that we, through our weakness, can find his strength. And that's an overcomer. And if we capitalize on that, the spiritual inertia and strength that comes from another father through his son, we can go through almost everything.
And my dad is one of those overcomer dads. I've shared about this before, but right, grew up on the south side of Chicago, was in gangs from the time he was 12. His dad wasn't in the picture. The day his dad left their home was when he was drunk one too many times and violent one too many times. And my dad's mom put an iron on his face and he never came back. I mean, that's the kind of upbringing my dad had. Extreme poverty, not much supervision, a lot of neglect, a lot of woundedness. So he had no template for how to be a father. And yes, he would even tell you there's a lot of things he didn't do right. But what he did do right is he kept rising up and pursuing my heart. And that has meant so much to me. And even though at times, like I'll never forget, Ken, when I was having one of my angry meltdowns because I was doing a craft project and it wasn't turning out right, you know what my dad said?
What did he say?
Oh yeah, I know. I've told you this when I was quizzing you. He said, God ought to strike you dead. Ooh. For my anger at God. I'm like, why do I even pray you don't help me? See, my dad was getting triggered in his inability to control the situation and to keep me calm. And so that's what he does himself. And so he wanted to kind of push me in that same direction. And what came out was, God ought to strike you dead, Michelle, for that response. Okay, not the best. Years later, which I would say is in the last decade, we've unpacked that a bit. And I got to hear the backstory. And my dad grew up as a Catholic boy, and he was literally told, if you step into a Protestant church, God will strike you dead. So he knew that line. And when he was in a moment of overwhelm and I was lamenting and he couldn't help me, he went back to kind of drawing on something in his, you know, I say we all have files in our brains. And he went back to that file and pulled out a phrase that I'd never heard before. But he had to make that right with me. And unfortunately, it was a few decades later. And Dad, that's why we're talking about this today, so you can make things right in the present with your daughter so that she doesn't grow up to be a woman who has unhealed wounds from you that lead her to make really poor decisions. Well, Ken, we are already at the go step. So dads, thanks for hanging in there with us. I'm going to give you a few questions, 3 of them actually, that you can ask your daughter if you want to put your love for her into action this week to lead her to lament. I already gave you one of them. Number 1, can you remember any specific words I've spoken to you that have stuck with you, that have made you feel better about yourself? Same question. Can you think of any words that I've spoken to you that have stuck with you that have made you feel worse about yourself? Number 2, ask her, do I do anything that shuts you down or makes you feel less confident to share your thoughts and feelings with me? Let me say that again. You can write this out in a text. You can put it in a letter. You can put it in a video and send it to her, or you can ask her straight up, do I do anything that shuts you down or makes you feel less confident to share your thoughts and feelings with me? Number 3, if you want to lead your daughter to lament, Dad, ask her, What is one thing about you that would help me be a better dad to you if I understood it? What is one thing about you that would help me be a better dad if I understood it?
Michelle, first of all, I want to thank you for doing this work over the past 10 years. Your research is profound, and it's making a difference.
Okay, you have to say that, right?
I do, but it's true. It's true. You know, before we were married, way before, as colleagues, I promoted you. I believed in you because you hit the target. So thank you for doing that, which leads us to this point now.
Dads, you make all the difference in helping build your daughter's self-esteem and helping her confidence grow. She's going to set greater goals with you in her corner. So like Ken just said, the research confirms, Dad, how important you are in your daughter's life. And one of the best ways you can lead her is to lead her to lament. We love you, we're committed to you, and we're here for you. So this wraps up another week's program. I'm so glad that we've had this time together. This may have been a more deep end of the pool kind of conversation than you were expecting today. But Dad, really, it's all about the breadth of your investment in your daughter's life over the years that will make the biggest difference in her life. I'm Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield, the Dad Whisperer, signing off. And I'm here with
Dr. Ken Canfield.
And we're wishing you the best, Dad, cheering you on as your coaches and saying, let today be a day where you intentionally and consistently invest in pursuing your daughter's heart. Go Dads!
Thanks for joining us for another edition of the Dad Whisperer podcast with Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield. To find out how you can invite Dr. Michelle for your next event, go to drmichellewatson.com and click on the speaking tab. That's drmichellewatson.com. Dr. Michelle loves bringing practical insights she gleaned over the past few decades to audiences of teenagers, young adults, men's groups, or women's forums. Once again, go to drmichellewatson.com, that's drmichellewatson.com, for more information on the books, resources, and blogs that she has available. Remember, you can listen to the Dad Whisperer podcast on Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. And we'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe and leave us a review. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you again on the next edition of the Dad Whisperer podcast with Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield.